So a reminder, tomorrow we're going to have two guest speakers. The first guest speaker is going to be discussing school psychology programs. The second set of guest speakers is going to be discussing clinical mental health counseling programs. So as we, between now and tomorrow, think about some questions that you might have for them. School counseling, clinical mental health counseling, so we can make them feel welcomed and that we're interested in what they have to say. Okay. All right, preparing for graduate school. First of all, comfortable living below the poverty line, right? So for the master's in clinical or counseling psychology, as well as for the PhD programs, you're not going to be able to work. There's just not going to be enough time to work on the side. Now, the PhD programs, you will have tuition. You won't have to pay tuition, and you'll have a stipend of about $15,000 for being a graduate assistant, but you're still not getting paid very much, right? The master's programs, you might have, again, a stipend, but you're also going to have to pay tuition for those, so you're not going to be making a lot of money. And then the master's in clinical mental health counseling, social work, and school psychology, you're many times not going to have a stipend for those. That being said, those master's programs, you typically can work part-time as well, but the point is you're not going to be making a lot of money while you're in graduate school. Okay, so you sort of have to lower your standard of living in some cases, which can be difficult. Depending on the level of education, you're going to do a lot of writing, okay, particularly in PhD programs. And for your job, if you get graduate training, there's a lot of writing, right? You have to document your sessions, for example. You have to write reports. Psychology, when you're working in direct service with people, you have to write a lot. So that's one consideration if you enjoy writing. If you're looking at clinical and counseling psychology programs, research is going to be king, particularly for clinical psychology programs. So that's a consideration there. For the clinical mental health counseling and social work and school counseling, research is going to be less of a consideration. Same with statistics, less of a consideration for those types of programs. Masters of Clinical Mental Health Counseling, social work, and school psychology. No matter what area you go into, what level of education is going to be a fair amount of reading, right? And into your career, if you're doing direct service, you're going to have to read about treatments and stay up to date on things. So you do read a lot of psychology books and journals. Can delay gratification. So, you know, graduate training takes anywhere from 2 to 6 years. Can you hold off on getting a job and in some cases starting your life, right? Knowing where you're going to live for the rest of your life, having a family. Because it is harder to have a family when you're in graduate school. So this is also a consideration. Can you delay gratification, and more specifically, how long do you want to wait before starting your life, basically, where you want to live, things like that. If you enjoy studying hours at a time, that's going to be important for PhD programs in particular. The master's programs in clinical mental health, social work, and school psychology, those are going to be, I think, for you guys, relatively easy. Okay, you're going to be relatively prepared coming out of here for those types of programs. Can easily concentrate, organized. One of the things that's unique about graduate programs, and I guess it is different from undergrad, is you're balancing a lot of different responsibilities, right? You have coursework, you have practicum where you're seeing clients, you're doing the supervision, where you're learning how to see clients effectively. You might have research as well. There's a lot to balance, right? It's not just classes anymore. So staying organized is important. Getting above average and excellent grades is going to be important. Most people in graduate schools get A's or B's. That being said, if you get accepted into the program, you're probably going to get an A or B in your classes unless you, I don't know, just like don't try. Desires graduate training not because of status, okay? Status or prestige is not the best reason to go to graduate school, right? It's a long time to be in school just for like a title, right? Desires graduate training not because of a high salary. If you want to make money, get an MBA. That would be my suggestion. The salaries for people who are PhD level psychologists and at the master's level are going to be comparable or less than somebody who has like an MBA and is in the business and the private sector. Strong desire to learn, right? Makes sense if you're going to continue your education. If you think about it, like for example, I was in a PhD program, so I went to graduate school for 6 years after having gone to high school for 12 years and college for 4 years. So what is that? 22 years of schooling. But for me, I like school. I like learning, so that was cool. But if some people are just ready to get out into the real world. Strong interpersonal skills, particularly if you're working in a clinical related field, can receive critical feedback. You'll get lots of feedback in graduate school because, most of you, if you go to graduate school, you're going to be doing so to be a counselor of some sort. And so there's a supervision that goes along with that and a lot of critical direct feedback so to make sure that you're providing correct care to people. So yeah, enjoying school is good. Driven to accomplish, that's a good thing. Devoted to psychology. Do not mind giving presentations. You're going to give presentations in graduate school, particularly research-related fields, and can tolerate ambiguity and uncertainty. So psychology is a social science, and it's not like biology or some of these hard sciences where we have a definite understanding of how things work. So, for example, I do assessments, and it's like, is this person going to be violent in the future? and there's some uncertainty there. Well, they're at an elevated risk, but I don't really know. How do I make the call here, right? So you do have to deal with uncertainty at times. All right. Questions about that? Okay. Real quick, some of the courses that are preferred for different programs, different graduate programs, for clinical and counseling programs, master's and doctoral programs, statistics, abnormal research. For educational and school psychology programs, in terms of preferred coursework, statistics, research, developmental. For industrial organizational programs, statistics, research. You guys probably see a theme there. These statistics and research courses, even if you're not going to be doing a ton of it in the program you go into, can be really separate you from your peers. So these are the required and median GPAs of accepted students into either clinical psychology and counseling psychology, master's and doctoral programs. Okay? So one trend is that they're increasing over time. And the other is that the median for doctoral, these are people who are accepted into doctoral counseling or clinical psychology programs. Median is 3.6, which is going to be higher than master's programs, about 3.5. GPAs for clinical mental health counseling, social work, and school counseling master's degrees are going to be much lower, 3.0-ish, at least 2.75. As we'll see, the acceptance rates of these programs are pretty high. One of the trends in higher education right now is it's harder and harder to get good enrollments for undergraduate students. And so the way that universities are making money is increasing the number of master's programs. So it's getting easier and easier to get into master's programs because there's more and more programs. So. All right, any questions? Can I get a Browns chant to... Oh, oh. All right. At least we're not Detroit. Is that what you said? Classic video.
Okay, no matter what area you go into, it is going to be helpful to have some research experience. That's something that can set you apart from other applicants, be it for a job or for a graduate program. And so I think that everyone in this room would benefit from taking PS 301, that's experimental design and psychology, and you have to take that to be to finish the psychology major. But also I think everyone would benefit from Psychology 401. That's a class where you have an independent research project where you're working by yourself within a class on a topic that you pick. And now the key here is to pick topics that are related to your interests, and in particular your career interests. That way when it comes time to apply for graduate school or for a job, you have an experience to talk about that demonstrates your fit with that job or program, and also it sets you apart from other people, because at most institutions they're not going to have the level of research at the undergraduate level that we have here at Carroll. Now, for the people who are going into counseling psychology or clinical psychology, master's or PhD in those areas, this is what you're going to want to do. So take 301, 401, and then on top of that, take 499. That's another independent research project, except with 499, you're working one-on-one with a faculty member. Take a statistics minor. So two of the courses that you need to take for the psychology major are stats courses, which also count towards the statistics minor, so you can knock that out with 4 additional courses. The easy minor to get, and it's going to make a huge difference in your applications to these programs. Help faculty out with their research, email them, ask them what help they need. So, myself, Dr. Masterson, Dr. Ben Porith, Dr. Murphy, and Dr. Imam, as well as Dr. Jones, we tend to be frequently needing help with our research. Also, Dr. Swenson as well. If possible, do a double major in data science. So with the data science major, it's a really easy major to take along with psychology because essentially up to 12 credit hours of that major are going to be in an area of specialization. And one of the areas of specialization is psychology. So you can have courses, essentially 4 courses that can be double dipped across the two majors, and then also you have the statistics courses that you need to take for the psychology major that are used for the data science major. So I believe it works out to 28 credits or so extra in order to double major in data science. So that's a really easy major to fit in. If possible, do research at the Cleveland Clinic. It is a well-known, nationally recognized brand. And then again, pick topics related to your interests when you do research, in particular your career interests. Seriously pick topics related to your research interests and start as early as possible if you want to get into a counseling or clinical psychology program. It's also going to be important to get practical experience. All grad programs as well as jobs value this practical experience. How do you get this experience? We have plenty of psych department practicums in different areas. Most of those practicums opportunities are being moved to Handshake, which is the online job and internship search platform at Carroll. So check that out for those. Although some of the internships may still be in the internship binder in the psychology department main office. Also, definitely recommend the Center for Service and Social Action. They have many connections with community partners to get you experience that's relevant to what you want to do. And then also take the initiative. So ADAMS is the Alcohol and Drug Addiction and Mental Health Services Board, essentially the Drug and Mental Health Board for Cuyahoga County. Their website's here. And on their site they have a list of providers of those services, and there's about 80 or so of them. Look through that list, contact these places and see if they have internship opportunities or volunteer opportunities. And the thing to keep in mind is that your title matters much less than the experience that you gain. So sometimes students get caught up with, I need an internship. Whether you're an intern or a volunteer or whatever, what's much more important is what you're doing, what experience you have, and how that can be used to demonstrate both your fit with whatever job or grad program you're applying to, as well as demonstrate your experience and ability. And then finally, mentoring is going to be very important. So you guys are all bright, but you don't have institutional knowledge. You don't know the ins and outs of applying to some of these jobs and programs. There's sort of unwritten rules and things you just don't know. So you need mentors to help guide you through that process. Also, most graduate programs are going to require that you have 3 letters of recommendation. So you want mentors who know you well, who are going to write positive letters about you. So it's very important. All right. Applying to graduate school. All right, first, for those of you who do want to apply to graduate school, you're going to want to narrow down your subfield, right? We've talked about a lot of directions that you can go in psychology. Those are listed here. You want to narrow down your subfield. What area of psychology or counseling do you want to specialize in? Once you've narrowed down your subfield, next you want to narrow down your level
of education, right? Do you want to go to a master's program or a doctorate program, right? We've talked about the advantages and disadvantages of that. And if you want to go to a doctorate program, do you want to go to a PhD program or a PsyD program? We've talked about the differences between those programs, right? PhD programs are going to be much more heavily research-based and are going to be free. And PsyD programs are going to be more clinically based, and they're going to have tuition, right? And this going back to a question raised earlier, if I want to get a PhD, when should I consider going to a master's program first? Well, if you have a low grade point average, if you're uncertain about your career goals, probably best to do a master's program before you commit to 6 years of training. Low GRE scores, missed deadlines. The deadlines for doctoral programs are typically December 1st. Limited research experience, and then also limited background in psychology, which was also a question raised earlier. All right, so the American Psychological Association wrote a report, on a graduate study in psychology. Okay, this is from 2016. It's summarizing a survey that the American Psychological Association did with all of the programs that it accredits. Let's go through this report. First of all, the importance of admission review criteria. And this is on a 1 to 3 point scale, 1 being low importance, 2 being medium importance, 3 being high importance towards applications and admission. And then these different colored lines relate to different types of training programs. So your standard PhD in clinical psychology, those are going to be the blue line, University of Arts and Sciences. And then the gray line, those are going to be the PsyD programs that are the for-profit PsyD programs. And then the green lines, those are going to be PsyD programs that are affiliated with universities. And what we can see, and if we start with GRE scores, they're, in the big scheme of things, not the strongest consideration, okay? The way GRE scores work is they're basically used to weed people out, right? I mean, like with clinical PhD programs, they'll get 200 applications. They can only bring in 50 people. So an easy way to knock out half the applicants is by a GRE cutoff, right? But if you meet the GRE sort of standards, then the application really becomes about what is your fit with the program. And one thing I don't think I mentioned is for clinical PhD programs, you're less so applying to a program, you're more so applying to work with a specific faculty member within that program, okay? So the fit that you need to demonstrate is with that possible mentor's research that they're doing, that what you're doing fits with that, and that you're interested in it and you'd be good at it. All right, so we see the GRE is a relatively low importance, particularly for the for-profit PsyD programs. We see that research is going to be relatively important, particularly for clinical PhD programs. Work experience isn't going to be much of a consideration. Clinical experience, so actually working with clients, not going to be that big of a consideration. GPA, no matter where you're going, GPA is an important consideration, although the GPA cutoffs are going to vary depending upon, different schools have different GPA standards. So it's not the case that you have to have a 4.0 to get into any program, right? Letters of recommendation, really important, no matter where you go, right? The interview, really important, no matter where you go. Your statement of goals, so no matter where you go, you're going to write some sort of statement about your career goals, your professional goals, and that's really important. And what they're evaluating is your level of fit within the program, okay? Within the program you're applying to.
What courses you took in psychology? Not that big of a consideration. Okay. So questions? Okay. So application fees for graduate psychology programs. I mean, generally what you're going to find is it's going to be about $50 per school that you apply to. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. And that's regardless of graduate program. All right, acceptance rates. We got to the money here, the money slide here. These are master's acceptance rates by subfields, and these are all, again, APA accredited programs. Okay, so this doesn't include like the clinical mental health counseling program, where that's accredited by something called CACREP. These programs are all accredited by the American Psychological Association. Okay, so these are the acceptance rates here. Master's acceptance rates, and we see they're pretty high, right? Hovering around, somewhere between 40 to 60%, depending upon the area of psychology that you go into. And you can also see, how relatively popular the different areas of psychology are. Where clinical psychology is pretty popular, counseling psychology pretty popular for master's programs, experimental, and others like neuroscience and social psychology can be relatively rare at the master's level. And so the black bars are the mean acceptance rates, and then these bars represent, I believe, like 75% of programs fall within that range. Okay, yeah. Why is the mean for social psych so low? I don't know. Probably because there might be more interest than there are programs, so they can be more selective. Okay. Other questions? We can look at doctoral acceptance rates by broad subfields that are accredited by the American Psychological Association. We can see that clinical psychology is by far the most popular area with 243 accredited programs. And we see, 7% acceptance rate. So they're difficult to get into. But there is a range here with us. And then the PsyD programs, as we'll talk about, the for-profit PsyD programs are going to fall closer to like 40 or 50%. And university-based PsyD programs are going to fall sort of around 20%. Okay? And then these are the research-based PhDs down here. Okay? Around 8%. And then we have the other subfields. One thing that I was surprised about when I saw these data was school psychology. So in terms of doctoral acceptance rates for school psychology programs, they're at 30%, right? And a range here of 20 to 45%. So if you're interested, in research and in school psychology and maybe in being an academic, PhD in school psychology might be a good fit. All right. And that's a relatively popular field too. I mean, there's 64 programs. So, all right. So those are doctoral acceptance rates. PhD versus PsyD acceptance rates. Briefly went over this. Basically, if you're going, and this is if you want to become a psychologist. Okay. You can get a PhD or PsyD. So the way this works is freestanding, in other words, for-profit PsyD programs have higher acceptance rates, okay? But with these for-profit programs, there's a lot of variability. Huh. All right. Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot of variability in these programs, right? So you're going to have on the one extreme, you're going to have really good PsyD programs that are for-profit. On the other extreme, you're going to have terrible programs that you would never want to go to, and then anywhere in between, such that you've got to really do your research if you go to one of these programs, okay? They also are the most expensive programs. And then you have university-based PsyD programs. The acceptance rates get lower, but now the variability in quality also gets tighter. So if most of the time, if you're going to a university-based PsyD program, it's a good program. You don't have to worry too much about not having a job or not being able to get licensed or the training being terrible. For clinical PhD programs that have an equal emphasis on research and practice, we see the acceptance rates here are about 14%, and then the most competitive programs are going to be the research-oriented clinical PhD programs. You'll see these programs, the clinical PhD programs of equal emphasis, be referred to as like scientist practitioner models, whereas the research-oriented ones will be called like clinical scientist models of training. Questions? Okay. Reflection. We'll take 3 minutes here for you to decide the rest of your life, right? And of course, these are things that you're going to be thinking about over the course of the semester, but think about what is appealing to you about a career with a bachelor's degree. What about a career with a master's degree? What about a career with a doctoral degree? And which are you most likely to pursue and why? Take about 30 more seconds. You guys ready for the most important 5 minutes of the class? Like, why didn't you just do this in the beginning? Jeez. All right, so now how do we find graduate programs? What are the best ways to find graduate programs? The best programs, the programs with the most financial aid, the programs that fit your interests, okay? All right, now there's going to be a few ways to find programs, okay? Graduate programs. First of all, there's graduate programs that are accredited by the American Psychological Association, by APA, okay? And what's really nice about APA is they publish a book. You can get it in the main office. There's also a copy in the library that you could borrow, called Graduate Study in Psychology. This is every accredited master's and doctoral program that's accredited by the APA in the United States. It has a lot of information about, financial aid, minimum GRE scores, average GRE scores, average GPA, lots of statistics, what people research there, what programs they have. Really good book. And then another good book to pair with this is Syed and Norcross Insider's Guide to Graduate Programs in Clinical and Counseling Psychology. They have all these surveys that they send out to training directors where they'll have them like rate on like a 1 to 7 scale, like how research oriented versus how clinically oriented the programs are. Also, they'll report what percentage of students get APA accredited internships, which you need if you're going to get licensed as a psychologist. So that's a really important statistic to look at when evaluating programs. So those are APA programs. CACREP also accredits graduate programs, master's and doctoral programs. So the Clinical Mental Health Counseling program here is accredited by CACREP. Stands for Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs. And so they have a directory there where you can search by state, by various characteristics, all the accredited programs. And you do want to go to an accredited program, okay? So that's extremely helpful. If you live in Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, or 3 states that shall not be named, sorry. It's too bad, man. Yeah, actually. Do we have Michigan fans in here? No. Steelers fans? Well, Penn State's okay. As long as you're not a Steeler. Are you a Steelers fan? Okay.
Categorically don't do sports.
Yeah. Well, anyway, if it's for Ohio, Michigan, that place, that state, or wait a second, I have to think. What state is this? Illinois, right? Yeah, Illinois or Indiana, geography. What I've done is I had a student go through the CACREP website, that directory we just saw, as well as the APA book, and write down every statistic you'd want to know about every accredited program, CACREP or APA accredited program in Ohio, Michigan, that place, New York, Illinois, or Indiana. Okay. Pennsylvania, by the way, for those. Anyway. So I'll show you what this looks like. Let me back out of here. Social work. Okay. So if you want to find a social work program, Emily didn't have time to pull together the spreadsheet for social work, but I'll get that done next summer. But in the meantime, what you can do is you can go to the Council on Social Work Education, and they have a directory where you can search for all the accredited programs, right? They're accredited by this accrediting body. So like Case Western's an example. Although Case Western's tuition is like ridiculous. It's like $30,000 a year or something like that. So keep that in mind. But there's other, reasonably priced alternatives. So that's an option.
And again, social workers can do therapy independently. There's a lot of flexibility in a social work degree. Law school. For law school programs, there's this, if you go to LSAC, I'm blanking on what it stands for, but it's another accrediting body, or it lists accredited law schools. The American Bar Association approved law schools. What you can do here is you can plug in your undergraduate GPA, plug in what you think your LSAT score might be, and you might figure that out by taking a practice test, for example. And then do search, and it'll show you something. Questions. A lot of options. It's a good thing. All right, money. So most graduate programs do provide some form of financial assistance, particularly the PhD programs. There's different ways that you can get assistance. One is going to be a tuition waiver where you just don't pay any tuition, which is nice. Another is going to be a research assistantship where you help a faculty member with their research, and then you get a stipend, normally around $12,000 to $17,000 a year. Or alternatively, you might have a teaching assistantship where you teach a course a semester and get a similar stipend. And normally it's going to be like teaching intro to psych courses. And then less common are scholarships at the graduate level. Not nearly as common as undergraduate, right? I mean, undergraduate, like everyone gets a scholarship of some sort, right? It's not that way at graduate. At the graduate level, whatever the tuition is, that's what you're going to pay. It's not like Carroll, like the tuition is whatever, but what you really end up paying is like half of that, right? It's not like that in graduate school. All right. In terms of typical tuition, depending upon level of education, this is just revisiting this chart that we had earlier. Again, PsyD programs are going to be, anywhere from $50,000. With more so university-based PsyDs are going to be about $50,000 total in tuition, up to $100,000 or $120,000 for these for-profit PsyD programs. Most master's programs fall between $30,000 and $50,000 for tuition. Another thing that Dr. Geller mentioned was this tuition forgiveness program. You could get a clinical mental health counseling degree. Basically any degree where you are working with people in a clinical context. You can get, if you work in an underserved population, right? So like in Cleveland, for example, in downtown Cleveland, you can get anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 of your loans forgiven over the course of 3 years. You guys probably heard him mention that. That holds true for any clinical mental health counseling program or any direct care. Yeah.
Is that for both your loans from undergrad and
Yes, all your loans. And we'll talk more after our career panel on November 13th. I'm going to go into financial considerations. We're going to talk about like buying a house, buying a car, et cetera, and paying back your loans. Okay. And there's a lot of loan forgiveness programs. I have one. I'll probably have $60,000 forgiven by the time it's all said and done. It's much better now than it was like 15 years ago, for example, in terms of these loan forgiveness programs. But we'll talk more about that after the career panel. Questions? Okay. All right, and I'm going to save this reflection actually for that. We're not leaving. Sorry, don't pack up. But I'm going to save the reflection for later, for when after we talk about the loan forgiveness programs. Okay. We're almost done, I promise. All right. So sorry to fake you out there. That was mean. Other considerations. Okay, this is important. Attrition rate. Okay, what percentage of people drop out of the program? If it's a lot of people, that's probably not a good sign, right? It means perhaps that the program isn't very good, so people want to leave. Or it might also be that the program's admitting students who can't, who aren't qualified and they can't complete the program, and that's not good either. So you want programs of close to 100% completion rate, in other words, close to 0% attrition rate. For PhD programs in psychology, again, you need to have an accredited internship in order to get licensed as a psychologist. So knock any program off your list that has less than a 90% APA internship match rate. For licensure rate, many master's programs report this. You want that to be at least about 90%. These are just sort of general guidelines. It doesn't need to be 100% because not everyone who goes into these programs wants to get licensed. Nationally, the average is about 80% licensure rate. So 90% or higher, that's pretty good. Job placement rate, you want that to be high, right? 90% or higher. And then also consider geography. So I mean, applying in the Cleveland area is kind of nice because there's not a huge competition to live in Cleveland. I mean, I love Cleveland, but people aren't like dying to come to Cleveland. So you would tend to have a better shot at a place like Cleveland or in rural areas compared to like New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles, right? There's going to be lots of people who apply to those sorts of programs, so it's going to be competitive because they want to live in those cities, right? Okay. Selecting programs to pursue. Okay, I'm going to give you the ideal here. Most of you probably aren't going to do this, but this is the ideal. Okay, first of all, get a list of 25 places that you want to apply to. Okay. Next, you're going to apply to 10 to 15 programs from that list of 20 to 25 schools that you're interested in. Okay. 25% of the schools should be program that you apply to should be programs where you meet the expectations of recent people who were admitted. 25% should be programs where you are slightly below this, right? So these are going to be your reach schools, right? And then 50% should be programs where you exceed the statistics of their recent admissions. So you're, basically not exactly safety schools, but sort of like safety schools, right? Now, if you're only going to go to the master's level, the acceptance rates are so high, and you guys are so good, that it's not going to be that competitive, right? But if you're applying to programs where there's 10% of people get accepted, now you're definitely going to need to apply to 10 to 15 programs to make things work in your favor, okay? To increase your odds. Questions? All right. Almost there. Statement of intent or a statement of purpose. You're going to have some form of this for any graduate school that you apply to. It is important. And what you want to emphasize is fit, fit, fit. How well do you fit with the program? How well do you, read the program description, read the program's mission, and how do I fit with that? Demonstrate how you fit with that. It's going to be big. This is before Zumba. This is like, this is jazzercise. This is.
I can feel the ambient 80s in the room. Right?
Yeah, this is. You guys know Richard Simmons? No? Okay, I'm not that old. All right. So emphasize. I don't know how to do a Richard Simmons impression, but that's too far. I can't do it. No, I can't. I don't think I could do it. I mean, I could see it in my mind, but I can't see it actually happening. It just not going to work. I don't even. No. Fit! Yeah, all right. And if, yeah. Oh, boy. Can't wait to tell my wife about that one later. She's going to love that. Like, what did you do? Research as well, if a PhD program, okay? Heavily emphasize research. Yeah. Okay, kisses of death in a personal statement. So, yeah, you know. So a fair number of people get into psychology because they've had mental health problems, which is not surprising because like 40% of Americans at any given point have a mental health problem. So it's like very common. But here's the thing, is that could be used against you, okay? And nobody, because of the Americans with Disabilities Act, nobody can ask about mental health problems. You don't have to disclose mental health problems, and so if you do, all it can really do is hurt you. So just avoid references to mental health problems. Also avoid providing excessively self-revealing information because that may indicate a lack of maturity or just sort of like I don't know, how do I put this? It just might indicate like this person is like, I don't know, do I really want to be around this type of person for the next 6 years? Like, you know, do they have like personality disorder or something like that? Excessively self-revealing information can sort of give away that vibe. And it also shows a lack of maturity because it's a professional statement, right? It's a personal statement, but it's a professional personal statement. It's not like something from your diary or something like that, right? As if you guys have diaries, I don't know. All right, sorry if you have a diary, by the way, it's fine. Avoid inappropriate humor, you know, references to political or religious issues, you know, it's one of those things, politics and religion, you know, two things that can be contentious, so there's no sense in running the risk of, you know, rubbing people the wrong way, that sort of thing. Letters of recommendation. What you're going to want is your letters. You're going to probably need 3 letters. You're going to want 2 to be from psychology professors who know you well. Okay. And for PhD programs, you want letters from people who have worked with you on research as research mentors. That's what the PhD programs are to be most interested in. Questions? Give your writers notice, okay? Give us some time. Contact us a month to 2 months beforehand to let us know. Now, because of FERPA guidelines, you all technically have access to any educational records, including letters that people write for your applications. And so what you have to, or what you'll be asked during the application process is, do you waive your right to read the letter? Because they have to legally ask you that. Waive your right. Because if you don't waive your right, what kind of message does that send to the university? Or what the university might think, right? They might think like, okay, well now I'm not going to get the letter writer's honest impression because the student's going to read it. For me, anytime I write a letter, I have the student read it first. That's just my policy, but it is best to officially waive your right. It could be a red flag if you don't. And make a packet for your letter writer. Make it as easy as possible for them to write your letter, right? The more convenient it is for them, the easier it is for them, the better the letter they're going to write for you. That's pretty sense. So what should that packet look like? Make it very nice, official, in like a folder or something like that. You know, a letter saying, you know, what's in the packet that you're giving them, what dates the letters are due, create a checklist of all the programs, all their due dates, make it as easy as possible to make sure all of them are sent in, a copy of your curriculum vitae. You're going to be learning about how to make that in one of the online modules. You know, a list of interactions and things that you want the letter writer to highlight for you. Again, make their life as easy as possible. A copy of your personal statement. That way they can coordinate the letter with your statement so it's a cohesive application. Copy of your GRE scores. Sometimes there'll be recommendation forms specific to the institution that you're applying to. Have copies of those. Web addresses and passwords. So you're probably not going to have passwords, but don't give anyone your passwords. But web addresses of the sites where most of the time nowadays everything's submitted online. So have all that really easy, and then a copy of your transcript, your undergraduate transcript. Make their lives as easy as possible. Interviewing, this is one of the things that sucks about applying to graduate programs is oftentimes, or sometimes students will apply to geographically diverse areas, so you'll be traveling a lot, and that gets costly. Most of the time, if you're interviewing and you're traveling, they'll put you up with a graduate student. So you won't have to pay for a hotel, but you'll have to pay for travel. You'll need to get a nice suit or, I don't know, dress suit. What's it called? Dress suit dress? Pantsuit? Yeah. Is that what's called? Pantsuit? Pantsuit? I mean, why is it called a pantsuit? Is it just like pants and... What a way to make an impression, huh? Anyway, convey enthusiasm and fit. These are the two things that I want you to remember on an interview. Be enthusiastic and show that you fit with what the people are doing there. And there's two ways that you can convey that enthusiasm and that fit. One is to be prepared before you go into the interview, right? Like, know people's names, the faculty members' names, look at their pictures, call them by their names, know about their research or what they're interested in or what their clinical work is in, and talk to them about those things. Be prepared, and then ask a lot of questions. The more questions you ask, it's going to illustrate that you are interested, right? And it's like anything else. You want people who are interested and excited about coming to your program. And then send a thank you letter every time to every person you meet. It doesn't have to be written out, but send emails thanking the person for meeting with you, for talking with you, and if you can, do at least one personalized comment. Like, I really enjoyed talking to you about X or whatever. Definitely always send a thank you email. All right, what if I don't get in to where I want? There's a few reasons for that. One, it has to do with not strategically applying. Okay, so if you apply to a bunch of reach schools, or what can happen is if you're very limited geographically, that can hurt you because it's going to be hard to demonstrate fit within programs if your only real fit is where it's located, right? Whereas if you're applying across the whole United States, now you can really zero in on programs that match your interests and your experiences. So that can be an issue. Low GPA or GRE scores and lack of research experience. As you go through your application process, again, you don't have the institutional knowledge. You may not really know where you fall. Talk to an advisor, a faculty member that you trust, that you've built a relationship with, so they can just give you honest, straightforward feedback and suggestions. Also, if you don't get in, plan B, you can take a gap year. I took a gap year. I thought it was a really good experience. I wouldn't have done it any differently. If you do take a gap year, hopefully you get employed. You probably will get employed. And if you want to try to get employed in some area that's going to enhance your application, right? So for example, some area related to mental health. And you guys can think about plan Bs for your career on your walk back to wherever you are going. I'll stick around if you have any last minute questions. Any questions that you may have, you can post online. There's a discussion board. I'll respond to them there. You can meet with me, totally fine. Do the online modules. They're all on Canvas now. And I'll see you on November 13th for the career panel. And I do need volunteers to reach out to people for the career panel. I got one so far. Let me know if you want to do that. It's going to be low amount of work, okay?